Hello, everybody, and thanks for coming back to yet another Velo Podcast. My name is Mike, and today I've only got Josh with me because Alvin is off at Velo's gravel bike field test, testing a bunch of new and interesting bikes with Hannah and the film crew. So I don't think we could say a whole lot about the bikes he has yet, but he definitely has some interesting things. So stay tuned for that because we will be covering all of that down the road at some point. Today, Josh and I have got a few news items to cover. We're going to dig into why SRAM is taking legal action against the UCI, aka everybody's favorite governing body. But our first piece of news, Josh, actually, I have a question for you. Josh, have you ever sent an embarrassing text message or like screwed up an email really bad, or maybe even like made a mistake on a social media post that you just like, you think back now and you're like, oh my God, how did I do that?
Yes. So we were just talking about Fox suspension offline, and there's two Foxes, right? There's the Fox they're like similar names or something. Anyway, sent it to the wrong one. Request something for the wrong. I have done that a number of times. Hey, so and so company, can I get this thing for testing? And then the response is, yeah, sure. If only that was our company and not this other company that is similar but not the same.
At least they replied to you. You know, they told you. Yeah. I remember a while ago I was having a conversation with like an acquaintance, and he said something, and I took a screenshot of it, you know, as sometimes you do. And you know what I did? I sent the screenshot to the same conversation. So it looked very bad. You know what I mean? Like, that's not
fantastic.
Not a good thing. I think if I go back, though, I've scrubbed my social media of most of the embarrassing, dumbass things that I've said over the years. So we're pretty good that way. But if you were, say, like the president of the UCI, and you were making a social media post congratulating the world champion winner of the time trial in Rwanda, you'd probably want to get that name right. Maybe, I think, right?
You would think. I mean, yeah. It seems like a pretty simple thing to double check, maybe.
Yeah. We all make mistakes though, but getting the winner completely wrong is definitely out there, and that's what the UCI president, David Leperriant. I think I'm
Leperriant.
Leperriant? Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
We looked it up, but we can't remember now.
Yeah. We're not going to talk a ton about or at all about World Champs actually on this particular podcast, but there is a metric shit ton of World Champs coverage on the Velo homepage from Shane, Jim, and Hoodie. So definitely go check that out to see all the coverage. But yeah, the one thing we are going to talk about is in the time trial, Remco caught and passed Poggi, which is crazy to say in itself. But then the UCI pres, David Leperriant, he congratulated Poggi for his World Champs win, which is sort of embarrassing, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, you have to wonder, it makes you wonder, like, did he watch to the end, or just like, he's a busy guy. He's got other things to do than...
Yeah. I would imagine that this, like, to me, this looks like a tweet or whatever it was, a social media post that was like maybe prepared ahead of time, you know, or maybe he didn't even do it. Like a lot of these people have other people who are making posts for them, you know?
Oh my God. That's maybe worse. If your job is to post for the president of the UCI and you made this
make a mistake.
Oh my God. It's better if it's at least if it's him, it's like, you know, whatever, he made a mistake. But if that person's whole job was to do this.
Yeah. And I think I do have to say, obviously, like, you know, there's a world where Poggi wins that time trial, of course. You know, like that's obviously not crazy to say. So you could kind of like understand, you know, Poggi wins a lot of things, so maybe he won this too. But I would have been personally real careful with this one, especially because the old UCI, they're getting a lot of heat right now for all sorts of things, all those Vuelta protests that they've been basically silent about, and just the world's being in Rwanda in the first place. So it's kind of been, he's been, you know, a little bit on the fire, you could say, lately, or on the burner. So this was an embarrassing mistake on his part, I think.
I think, and it's good. It's good to take I think it's good to take an opportunity to laugh at the UCI and the ridiculousness because that's what this podcast is. What we're about to dive into.
Oh, I can't wait. We're going to get into our friends at the Union
Yeah.
Cycliste Internationale in a little bit. First, though, we're also going to talk about Alvin's Factor Aluto first ride. So, Josh, Factor, obviously, it's a pretty race-focused company, and they already have the Ostro. It's their very race-focused gravel bike. And when Alvin was at Unbound earlier this year, he spotted a raw carbon prototype from Factor, and it turned out to be this thing, the Aluto, which, Josh, it looks pretty normal, it seems to be the selling feature of this bike. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I have said this, and I go back and forth on whether I'm right or wrong. And so, readers or viewers, listeners, you let me know. I'm sure you will. But I feel like there's this, if you don't live in BC, I feel like there is this swing that's happening where people have bought basically monster trucks of bikes, and then they have decided, you know what? I actually don't need that, and I don't ride like that. I ride 4 service roads that are pretty smooth, and maybe I could do it on a 32, but like a 45 just flies.
Yeah.
And I do a gravel race or 2 a year, and I don't wanna have 8 bikes. So, something like this, I think, is making more and more sense. I think there's a swing
Yeah.
that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to push back on that in a little bit. First,
Okay.
though, let's talk about some details here. So obviously this thing it's very classic looking. It's the first Factor to get down tube storage. That's a good
Now
thing.
that's
Alvin
kinda
said,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's also crazy. But Alvin said the hole was pretty small. He could get a TPU tube in there and, a tire plug kit and things like that. But you'd be hard pressed getting any sort of warmish jacket in there. I don't think would ever happen.
Yeah, I'm gonna interrupt you and say, I just find that unacceptable.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
What
If
you
you're
need
gonna
to be if yeah, you need to be able to get a jacket in there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you're gonna put a big hole in your frame, it might as well be big enough to get all the things in. It does do 1 or 2 by. It's UDH if you want it to be, which is great. 27.2 post, also a good thing. Normal 1 1/8 steerer, nothing funny there, also a good thing. Tire clearance though, 47 millimeter max tire clearance. Alvin tried to put a 50 on just to check, and the width is okay, but the interference comes from the back of the seat tube. So I understand, like, when you say that people don't need, 50 millimeter tires, not every gravel rider needs 50 millimeter tires, okay. I get that. But on the other hand, what are the drawbacks? Like, why does this bike have to be so Europe? Why can't it fit
Well,
50s?
so the reason it in general, and I haven't looked at the geometry of this one in particular, but in general, it creates problems making a short chainstay. You want a
Yep.
snappy, racy bike, so you can't have a bunch of things there. Now they probably could have gone just 1 by only, and I would think that was be fine. But again, Euro style, people want their 2 by, I guess. I don't know. Here's the thing. As much as I say that there is a swing happening and people don't necessarily need the monster truck bikes, I do think if you buy a bike right now and 5 years from now, you're like, man, I need a new bike. Why? Because it doesn't fit the tire clearance that I need. Right? That's the
Yeah,
thing. Every time when I talk to friends and other people riding and they're like, I'm ready. I'm looking for a new bike. And you're like, well, why? Because of tire clearance, always tire clearance. So I say give people more tire clearance, and if they don't use it, fine.
yeah. So not only is this Factor's first bike with down tube storage, it's also Factor's gravel bike with the most tire clearance, apparently, Alvin says in his first ride article that's on the Velo homepage that everybody should go read. Which is kind of crazy to me. So they don't have a bike with more tire clearance than this. Like if they had a bike that fit 50s or 55s or whatever, I could sort of maybe understand this thing not fitting 50s. But when you don't have any bike that fits the big meat, why not just make this thing fit the big meat? And obviously the answer, I think, is 2 by chain stays and all of that stuff. But it just, I I live in BC, so I have to acknowledge that I live in a weird world where, like the big tires are good for me, and I have to acknowledge that there's other places in the world, even Europe. Um, but it seems like a roadblock because you're right. In 2 years, whoever owns this is going to be like, man, I wish I could put 50s on here,
Yeah. That's the thing. There was a time not very long ago when 40 was like the standard gravel bike tire,
Yeah.
and no, it just wasn't bigger. And those bikes are those are modern bikes. There's nothing wrong with those bikes, except that people go, you know what? I really want a 45 on there, and now they need a new bike to do that, and
Yeah.
that sucks.
Yeah. Having experienced 40 mil tires at way too high PSI and 2.2 tires at low PSI, I know that everybody should be taking advantage of like a more forgiving ride that's not slower, So I don't know. I look at this thing, but the flip side here is Alvin says in the article that this thing could easily do double duty as someone's like road bike and light duty gravel bike, which in a lot of places makes a hell of a lot of sense. Like, especially someone like yourself, Josh, you say you live where you do like mostly pavement and a little bit of smooth, fast gravel. So, right?
Yeah, but I say one by. And this is and so if it was one by only, they'd probably be able to fit bigger tires. And this is actually a consumer thing. They're responding to consumers, I would bet, because there are a lot of consumers that are like, "Oh no, I want 2 by." And I'm just come on people, just move along.
Dude. So we've talked about this before. I have 1 by on my bike and I should have 2 by. Like I'm not even close to being a professional athlete. So far back, I'm a normal human being and I live where the roads are very steep, like lots of grades, way over 20% gravel. Like you're not standing up because you'll spin out,
Right.
So, I mean, I have a 36 tooth chainring on my bike right now. And I also have a 34 for when the bike is loaded, which sounds crazy if you live, in lots of other places in the world. Why is your gearing so low? But the answer is I should have 2 by, I think. So I don't want to shit on the bike for having 2 by because I think that is still the answer for a lot of people,
What would your gearing be if you had 2 by? So you have a mountain bike rear. So what is that? A 40?
It's at 10,
No, it's a
52.
52. Yeah, 52. Okay, so you've got let's say a 34-52. And what would you have if you were doing 2 by? How small would that? You wouldn't have a smaller chainring, would you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to sit down and do the math. I can't do that shit in my head, man. But
Well,
yeah,
I just don't even know if you'd be able to get a smaller chainring on there. So you'd probably, most of the time when it's 2 by, you would have a bigger chainring, and then you would also have the smaller chainring. You're probably not going smaller than 32, so you'd have more fast gears.
Yeah,
but that's not what we're talking. That doesn't solve
no,
anything.
we're talking about more low gears. Yeah, and just like ego, I hate having the 34 on there. I know that's a silly thing. That's a me thing, but
That's silly.
Yeah, I know. I used to run 40 tooth chain rings here, and I would end up like spinning 20 RPM, and my knees wouldn't straighten for a week after a hard climb. It would hurt. But yeah, no, the lower gears are the answer. So, anyways, Alvin generally liked the bike, and he did say that it was kind of a good machine for somebody who's not riding anything super rowdy and is still going to do some road stuff and does not give a shit about tire clearance. So there you go. Factor Aluto. It also looks really good. I like that classic sort of non-aero thing. I know you don't.
I mean, I like aero too. I like it. I like it all. What I don't like is I don't know. There's some bikes we've been looking at that are not so good.
We'll talk about those in another podcast. They're not released yet, but they're ugly.
No, they're so bad.
One more thing about the Factor before I leave the Factor conversation is the back of the head tube has been made square, like truncated flat, so that aero frame bags can like butt up against it. Yeah, isn't that cool? I like that.
That's such a great detail. I love those. I always forget the name of the company. I'm actually looking at the bag right now. The Aero
Apidura.
Apidura. The Aero chain. They're so good. They're so
Yeah.
they're so well designed. They're just like so smart. I love it.
Yeah. You can't put a jacket in the down tube, but you got your airframe bag on there.
I mean, I guess you can get a jacket in there.
I know, right? There you go. There's your answer. Josh, we have to move on to a more serious topic. SRAM is suing the UCI. That's probably not the right
No, that's not
terminology.
the
I
right
probably
term.
shouldn't say that.
And actually, the fact that it's not the right terminology is one of the most interesting parts of this story, I think.
Yeah. So they've started legal proceedings is probably the right way to put it. And everybody that's listening, it might surprise you to find out that I know absolutely nothing about corporate law or international corporate law or whatever that is. But it turns out the root issue of the SRAM and the UCI thing is actually kind of simple. Josh, what's going on?
Yeah, so what they have done is they have said that it's they have moved against the UCI for anti-competitive behavior, for abusing a they're the only one. There's no competition, so they're abusing that position. And the way that they are showing that is they're saying that because there's this new gearing test that's coming up. If you haven't heard about it, what it amounts to is, I think it's there it is. It's 10.46 meters per revolution of the chainring,
Which is your rollout.
Yeah, your rollout. And the way that, like, in real world, what that means is the gearing that works is that you can have a 5411, which is no problem if you're running Shimano or Campy. Yes.
So that's 10.46 rollout, 10.46 meters per pedal stroke is what the UCI is suggesting as the maximum rollout distance for the given gear, and anything higher than that has been deemed illegal, it sounds like.
Right. And the point, thank you for slowing me down. The point here, because I've been so immersed in it, I do this on the podcast sometimes where I've written like 5 articles about it, and I'm like, everyone knows, but
yeah, I don't know shit.
So what the idea here is that they're trying to slow down the peloton for safety, in theory. All right?
In theory.
And I'm not saying that, I'm not agreeing with that, but that is what they say. They're trying to slow down this peloton to make it safer, and they're sort of reaching towards like junior gearing for that. And they have this test coming up, and they're going to go, okay, 4.4 or 10.46 meters per pedal stroke is the max, and then that equates to a 5411. So if you're on Shimano, no problem. You put your 5411 on, it's probably what you would have used anyway. Doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. The problem is for SRAM has built their, I don't know if they're getting around patents or if they're, SRAM would tell you that it's all about differentiation, right? And so they have said, hey, a 10-tooth cog makes more sense because you shift less on the front chainring, and also, and everyone can debate this, but both SRAM and Campy say that a smaller cassette chain, a smaller cassette ring is actually more efficient. So whatever. They have said this is their thing. They have gone all in on this technology, and they have 10-tooth cogs. Well, now the UCI comes along and says, you can't, your maximum is 5411 or 10.46. So SRAM says, okay, if with our gearing that's available, that limits us to a 4910. So what that ends at, which is 10.44 meters per pedal stroke. It's just slightly less. And you think, that doesn't matter. It's not that big deal, except in a sprint. It can mean one extra shift, which can mean losing.
Yeah.
And so SRAM is saying, because they're the only ones that are affected by this, that it is anti-competitive. And they are not suing. They are taking it to the European Union as an anti-competitive practice, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah, that is the much more correct way to put it. Yeah. I read a quote from SRAM in your article on the Velo homepage that everybody should go read. And it said, the protocol forces SRAM to mechanically disable its 10-tooth cog, reducing gear options and placing SRAM-equipped riders at a competitive disadvantage. So I don't know anything about any of this. My question is, are SRAM sponsored racers, have they actually been locking out their 10-tooth cog already in competition to remain
I
legal?
I don't think it's happened yet.
Okay.
The test is upcoming as far as I know. But yeah, that's right. The whole thing is that SRAM isn't just saying that this is an existential, this isn't just an existential threat for the future. They're saying you have already publicized that our drivetrains aren't safe, essentially. It's a little more complicated that they're saying consumers are going to hear that our drivetrains are not safe, and therefore we are already being materially disadvantaged. And also, we can't just re-engineer our entire ecosystem for one test that's coming up. So the only option that we have is to disable the 10-tooth cog, and that means running 11 speed for racers, which is, again, not only do they have less, they have to shift an extra time in the sprint, but then they're now going to be running 11 speed when everyone else is running 12 or 13 if you're campy.
Yeah, it's like looking at it from the outside, at first it's like, oh, SRAM is obviously and rightfully concerned about their racers and their teams and things like that. But it is actually a much, much bigger issue than that, because all of their drivetrains, like all of their high-end drivetrains, not all of them, but like basically all of them run that X-domed style cassette with the 10 to whatever it is, which means that from their perspective, the UCI is saying that, the majority of their high-end drivetrains aren't legal, which is something huge,
And they're not, this is where the UCI potentially made a mistake. Now, we're not lawyers, but who knows? But is that they have picked winners and losers, because everyone else, well, let's be honest here, Campy obviously hedged their bets against this. When you look at they have a bunch of options so that you can shift your cassette and chain rings around kind of however you need to. But Shimano, they're basically being picked as a winner. And SRAM is also saying that, there's a couple arguments they're making in addition, which is that they're saying this is all based on just informal rider surveys that, because Shimano is more prevalent, just sort of assumed Shimano gearing. It's like implicit bias. They're saying you didn't even take the time to do, it's not even proper. So then at the same time, they're also like, these are just rider surveys. And if you actually look at how accidents happen, it has nothing to do with gearing. They have made a bunch of these arguments.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion. Obviously, I think the main premise of slowing rider speeds down and gear rollout, I personally think it's dumb, and the two aren't. They're not connected really. But hey, I don't know anything. So, part of this looks to me like it comes down to communication almost. If we go back a month or two, we had that whole weird handlebar debacle that's still cooking. Probably
it's still cooking. I haven't seen updates to that from the safety meeting. Adam Hansen sort of said everybody calm down. There'll be a safety meeting in September. He was sure that everything was going to change. I don't know if I believe him, because he doesn't know for sure, but that hasn't seemed to have happened yet. So who knows?
And this, to me, it seems like almost like it's a very different ingredients, but it really seems like a lack of communication to me. If you're limiting, or if you're the UCI and you talk about limiting a rider's gearing and certain gearing being illegal in races, I mean, to me, that sounds like something that you would talk to drivetrain manufacturers about before maybe making an announcement like that. Because when you make an announcement like that, I'm no fan of huge companies. I mean, I'm not in anybody's corner, but it does seem pretty damaging to SRAM.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest that I'm in SRAM's corner, but not because they're SRAM, only because they're the other side of the UCI.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
exactly.
whoever's against UCI, I'm in their corner. But
Yeah.
and I just like, and I didn't
What
used to
is the
be like
saying?
that.
Josh, what is the saying? The enemy of my
Yeah,
enemy is not that
yeah,
they're our enemies, but you know what
yeah.
I mean.
None of that are my enemies, but I'm just like I don't know that I would have thought at one point in my like for most of my life I would have been like the UCI is a racing organization and they're just doing their thing and whatever. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
that much. But when you really understand just how much they control of the bike industry, and I've talked about this before, that something like this, it would I don't know, who necessarily believes in a 10-tooth cog or not. I don't know if people are passionate, but if this were to go forward and the UCI was going to change to make it so that this 10-tooth cog wasn't working, that would disappear from the market. You would not be able to buy that.
Yeah.
And it's not just that, well, in races, it wouldn't be able to use it. It is that it would disappear from the market. And and you might not care about a 10-tooth cog, but you might care about non-aero bikes, which are disappearing from the market for exactly the same reason. Because the UCI has this rule of weight, and the manufacturers now are meeting that weight with their aero bikes, so there's no point in making a lightweight bike. And SRAM makes this argument that the racing is marketing for them, and
Yeah.
so when your marketing can't show this other alternative, it just starts to disappear from the market.
Yeah. I don't think I would call this like obviously it's not like a fight for survival or anything like that. Like, but when all of their drivetrains basically use that system, you could understand why they would be pretty concerned. It makes me think about that time way back in the day when SRAM sued Shimano basically to survive. And I don't, I'm going to put my foot in my mouth here, but it was like some sort of like anti-competition thing that was going on where they weren't getting spec'd on bikes. And I mean, that was a long time ago, but I'm under the understanding that that's basically what allowed SRAM to survive. So it's not like they're strangers to having to deal with this sort of stuff.
I mean, so that case, I did look it up before this. Note it down, people. I prepared slightly.
More than me.
So in 1990, they did a very similar anti-competitive case, and then what was happening was that Shimano was offering dealers a 10% overall discount if they spec'd Shimano drivetrains. And so then SRAM said that was anti-competitive. They forced that to stop, and they became a viable alternative. And the reason that like what gets me excited in this situation is that could this be the end of the UCI dominance? If
Uh,
SRAM were to win this case, would it not mean that like what happens in a monopoly case? If you break up Microsoft, if you break up the UCI, if you say that you can't use these anti-competitive practices, would that not give a foothold for someone like the ASO to come in and maybe be a competitor to the UCI in the same space?
yeah, possibly. I mean, I don't know what it would take for that to happen, obviously, but I do know that the UCI is not popular. And when they keep doing stuff like this, you could understand why they're not popular. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they just put their foot in their mouth. Like, yeah, exactly like you said. Could they not? And I haven't like done all the math on this, but if they're really going to use gearing to slow people down, and maybe that works, is there not a way to make it work so that like, would you not start with the outlier, the 10 tooth? You go, okay, what do we need to do to make 10 tooth work? And then does that work for 11 tooth? Or I guess you could do it the other way too, but you go, okay, they're using 11 tooth. How do you make it? You just want to make it equal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, just take some time, think things through.
Couldn't the people on SRAM bikes just put oh, see, no, I was just going to say they could just put a slightly smaller chainring on, but then they're going to lose that rollout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, that's what they have to
exactly.
do. It limits to
Yeah.
a 49 maximum chain ring. So then it just slows down the top end. It's an extra shift. It has all these knock-on effects. What they could do, in theory, was you go, okay, they actually go to a more Shimano style gearing with larger chain rings and a larger cassette. Except SRAM has spent 8 years. How long's it been?
All the money. All the money.
Yeah, developing 10 tooth and making and saying that that's the best and shaping their whole ecosystem around that 10 tooth cog to then. The UCI is like, okay, in a couple months we're going to need you to go to 11 tooth. That's just not happening.
Yeah, no, I don't think that will happen. And also, we should also say that isn't this gearing test exactly that? Just a test. It's not like they're going to be dropping this law tomorrow on everybody.
Well, that's what the UCI. So the UCI did respond. And now when I write these articles, I have to take a very neutral stance. Here is what happened. I'm going to tell you right now, when I read this UCI response, I was like, wow, that is weak. That is a weak response.
We go.
But their response was like, well, this is just a test. So maybe nothing will happen. But SRAM counters that right away. In the very beginning, as they laid it out, they said, by saying that SRAM isn't meeting the standards, even as a test, you are putting into consumer minds and you are damaging our brand.
Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, they were smart about it. They laid when I read through the SRAM thing, I mean, to me, they have covered every base. Now, they could still lose at the governmental level. I don't know enough about whether they have a case. But in the court of public opinion, I'm going to say that SRAM did their homework and the UCI did not.
Yeah, that's in a way definitely not surprising. I imagine SRAM was on that like a fat kid on some Smarties right away. They're not screwing around with any of that.
The press release was like, must have been a 3-page thing, really detailed, tons of quotes, every single thing that you could if you're reading it through and you think, well, what about this? And then it's there in the next paragraph. And now the UCI's is I don't know, 300 words, 200 words. It's like a couple paragraphs and it's just this little guys, we're just testing and we don't know. We're just asking questions.
Man, we need to get Adam Hansen on this podcast because we have lots of questions for him. And obviously, ex-pro, he's got a good perspective about this thing. So we got to get that guy on here because there's definitely a lot to talk about. Rider speeds, I don't think it's the gearing. I think it's the fact that 120 guys are flying into a freaking roundabout at 75 kilometers an hour and the street narrows down and there's a parking island in the middle with a pole in it. It's got nothing to do with gearing.
It's super obvious.
It's shitty courses.
Everyone else is like, hey, maybe you should stop a little earlier where it's not a downhill into a 90-degree turn for the sprint.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay. It's easy for us. It is definitely easy for us to sit here and say all of this, of course, from the comfort of our own homes and not at the UCI's headquarters where they have more information. So who knows? Maybe they have some information that would prove us 100% wrong, but it sure doesn't look like it. So
doesn't seem like it. And if they did, I think they would have spelled it out.
Yeah.
Also, it should be mentioned as we're talking about this, when we're talking about rider speeds and are they too fast, which personally, I don't really agree. I don't think that's the problem. I think, as you just said, it's the course design. But you know how you slow people down is you make their bikes less aero. You reduce in fact, you could do this by reducing the minimum weight, I would bet. This is what I just talked about earlier. Reduce the minimum weight and let manufacturers try to meet have ultralight bikes and then let that play out versus let the teams just try to fight for, should we choose aero? Should we choose lightweight? I don't know if that would reduce the speeds on its own, but it would definitely change the dynamic. Some teams would choose to be fast in the mountains where it's not really dangerous.
Yeah. For all the bad press that the UCI gets, I think everybody would love that idea if they removed the minimum weight ban.
Oh my God, I don't think a lot of people really understand how that would change the market. Everyone that's like, I hate aero bikes. If the UCI got rid of that minimum weight, you would have viable lightweight bikes and they would be freaking amazing.
Yeah. What about so jersey pockets on the back of jerseys? What about if they made them really baggy so they like stood up, like they were like air brakes,
like a sail?
So no, just
wasn't
wait.
it you that sent me the? No, I sent it to you. The speed skater, the rollerblade speed skater with the
exactly
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I had an
these guys...
the parachute. She had a parachute. She's a
Exactly.
USA Olympic or national speed skater on rollerblades, not ice skates, and she trains with a parachute.
Yeah,
so
resistance.
Let's see it.
Yeah,
resistance.
So all these guys, let them do their fancy bikes and their deep dish wheels and all this shit and their aero bars, whatever. Do whatever you want. But as soon as you lean over, your pockets are going to fill up with air and you have an air brake. There you go. Problem solved, everybody. UCI, give me a shout. Send me an email. That one's free. The next one's I'm going to charge for, though. Okay.
Oh, God.
Josh, let's move on because it is fall now, unfortunately. Yeah. Gosh.
I hate it. I just want everyone to understand, like, so the other Velo guys, they're in San Francisco, basically. Alvin's not technically in San Francisco, but it's San Francisco. And they're like just cruising through fall, like no big deal.
Yeah, they don't even care.
I'm like,
it's not a
they're
change,
just like,
so.
Whatever. Alvin's like, I don't really ride trainers because, like, why? I just, I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna start getting dark at 4:30, and it's gonna rain for the next 6 months.
Yeah, exactly.
I hate it so much.
Which is why you've been working on a light roundup.
Yeah.
Tell us what you've been doing.
So every year we gotta go through. This is actually the second year. So we did the big bike lights buyer's guide the first year, and it was the first buyer's guide that Velo did, and it was. I have been at other places where the first buyer's guide is an experiment, and you see what works and you see what doesn't. And this year, so Alvin did it completely on his own last year, and he did exactly what was asked for, and it was almost like an encyclopedia. This year, what I've come back with was, these are the lights that I think are actually worth looking at for specific things. And it's a little bit of a change, but a lot of work, because what that means is I have to test a whole lot of things and
so less
make
lights,
sure.
But more
there's much less. There's far fewer lights this time, but they're like, this is what this is good for, and I have really tested them. Last year we had a lot of lights that were like, hey, we looked at this light, and here's what we like about it or what we don't, which is entirely reasonable. But they're just, for one thing, it's crazy to me how fast some lights turn over. So a lot of them were just gone. It wasn't even worth including them because you couldn't buy them.
Yeah. How did you test these lights?
So I just ride. I ride a lot, and I ride at night when I need to ride at night, or I ride during the day, or, I have different categories. So they're actually not all for riding at night.
Okay. Well, let's stick to the interesting ones that are for riding at night.
Well, okay, hold on. I'm going to push back on that, because some of the most interesting lights, I'll mention the Trek ones, which are in there. So the Trek, they have these little Ion, I think they're called the Ion 100 and the Flare RT, not that one. They're tiny. They're like just little square things. And it turns out, I had to look it up. It was 2018 that they came out initially, and they had all these white papers. They put lights on. They paid to, I'm sure they paid. They paid to get lights on bikes in Zwift, and they had all their pro athletes use these little lights, and it was all about staying visible during the day. They had these white papers on their disruptive light patterns and the reflectors, and it was a cool thing. But they finally just updated them. So what was the point here? My point was that the most interesting lights are not it's not necessarily about using them at night or not. I find those lights fascinating because they created a whole genre. No one thought about daytime running lights before those.
I've never used a daytime running light. I probably should.
So I always use a rear light during the day, mostly because I use radar. So I want, so they just have a light. But if you don't use radar, the front light, so with that light in particular, so the rear one of that, it's this little tiny thing. And I remember I did this ride from Portland to Boise, so it's across Oregon and part of Idaho. And I was riding through the desert at one point, or it's like high desert, but it's a desert. It's high, like the middle of the day, blaring sun. And my wife, she did the drive, and so she passed me along the way. And I said, like, hey, could you see me? Because I was testing. And she's like, oh my God, I could see you so far away. Like, I couldn't make you out at that point, but I could see the light blinking. And I'm like, I'm sold.
Yeah, that's all you need. It's fucking dangerous out there, man. I spent tons of time on the road too. And like, I tell you, every time I go somewhere, like every time I have to ride on the Sea to Sky Highway, I'm just like, oh fuck, like here we go, like I'm really, and I do put daytime lights on my bike when I do that, to be fair, actually. So anything that could make it safer. I mean,
we should talk about the recent accident at the last field test. We were riding 4 people in the middle lane in broad daylight. Somebody turned right in front of us and said, oh, I didn't see you guys.
Yep.
Now, would a light have fixed that? I don't know, but couldn't hurt.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely my fault that I hit her, the back of the vehicle, but she still turned right in front of us.
She still turned and said she didn't see us.
Yeah, exactly. So, I should be running them all the time. I should probably have them on like a daylight light on my forehead, just like walking around, like when I go grocery shopping.
Well, so that's the cool thing about those little truck lights is that they're tiny and they last for like 9 hours and they fit anywhere and you don't have to think about them a lot. It's not like you have to figure out mounting and.
Yeah. When I do a big ride that I know is going to start in the day and go through the night, I use a tail fin rack. And on the outside rack stay, I put 2 or 3 different flashing lights. And then I also would have a light on the back of my tail fin bag. And then a lot of times I will also put a light on the back of my helmet. And
I want to ask you about these lights because that's smart in a way. Have you ever asked anybody following you how far they can see you? Like even just other riders? Because I got a buddy, Alex, if you're listening, I got a buddy that swears on just buying cheap, junky lights and attaching them to the back of his jersey, like his jersey pocket.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I can't see those like 50 feet back. They're just doing nothing. It is just a waste of time. Now, you probably are smarter than him. It's not hard. So your lights might be better, but people should, you need to ask people if you're just doing that with a lot of those small, cheap lights just can't be seen during the day.
Interesting. That's good to know. Yeah, maybe I should get some flashers, some daytime running lights. Let's talk about big lights, Josh, now.
Let's
earlier,
do it.
Before we started recording, we were talking about my outbound light, which has been really, really good. I've really liked it.
Yeah.
But you've been tinkering with the new exposure light. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm actually so excited that you have that light and we can talk about this because this has been an ongoing thing for me for years. So the Detour light is really amazing and it's a pretty good price. It's like $180, I think. And it has a sharp upper cutoff line. And the real innovation, because like we were just talking about the winters, it's just raining constantly, right? So the real innovation of that Detour light is that it has pretty good lighting. It's not that powerful. It's only like 1,200 lumens, I think. But it has a really good reflector, so it looks like it has more lumens. But you can't quite get through the night with it, except that they ship it with this USB cable that seals to the light. It's just a simple innovation. So you can charge that light will run while it charges, and you can charge, pass through charging, and it will charge while in the rain, no problem. That light is amazing. And exposure, like in the past, their lights are better, but also about double the price. And there was some weirdness with it. And this is the first year where, to me, exposure has... Now, they are still more expensive. But to be fair, they're CNC machined out of a single block of aluminum. Their lights are just
It's a
crazy.
different thing.
It's a different thing. It's another level. But in terms of functionality, I feel like they have surpassed the Detour light in a real way for the first time.
What is the weirdness you were talking about with the previous versions, and how is the new one different?
Yeah. So this is what I stopped. You started to tell me about this earlier, and I was like, nope, stop. I want to tell everybody about this. So exposure lights have what's called an OMS, I think they call it. Whatever. It says it's burn time. It's burn time for lumens. So they have it printed on the light barrel so that, and again, you started to talk about this. When you're doing something crazy, your brain power is low. You do not
Even
want to
lower
have
than
to,
usual.
yeah, you do not want to have to, I remember doing a Rafa ride in the Pacific Northwest. We tried to do this ride, but absolutely pouring down rain at like 5, 6 p.m. The sun's going down. I haven't eaten. I've been riding since 5 a.m. I do not have the battery. I don't have the brain power to figure things out. And so the whole power of the exposure lights was that you basically figure it out at home. There's like, I don't know, 8 different programs, and you figure it out at home, and then you pick a program, and then once you've picked that program, it now has a high, medium, and low, or even just a high and low, depending on the program you pick. And while you're riding, you don't think. You just turn it on. Yeah, and it's brilliant. Except that there was a lot of weirdness with that OMS selector. So, and I've talked to them a lot over the years where I go, okay, because this is how it's supposed to work. You go, it's 1700 lumens, and so the max brightness is 1700 lumens, and max runtime is 2 hours. So you go, okay. So that means if I run it for 4 hours, well, now I also have the lumen output, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how it's supposed to work. And it was you would think that that's pretty simple, except every time I would want to use it, I would go, okay, I just want to double check with you guys. I'm doing this math. So that means the 10-hour runtime has this lumens, or the 12-hour runtime has this lumens. And they'd go, well, actually, it's not a perfect, it's kind of a curve, and actually you get this. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to figure that out? You don't have it. It's not listed anywhere. There was no way to figure that out. Well, this year, and the other thing was that you couldn't do pass-through charging with their lights. Now, you kind of could if you had the right battery pack, but it wasn't USB, so you'd have to get an adapter, and now they had this other battery, which was, again, pretty good. In fact, maybe better than using USB because it was smaller, but it was just a thing. So this year, they have come out with USB-C charging, and for the first time, they are listing on the website, the OMS says this many lumens for this many hours. And you're like, thank freaking God.
Yeah, done.
So for the Toro 16, which I believe is the one that, what's his name? Rob, who you interviewed. He won, yeah, he won Unbound, right?
XL.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure this is the light that he used. And this light will do 12-hour burn time at just under 500 lumens, I believe. And that's it. You don't have to. That gets you through the night. That gets you through the night, even in the deep part of winter for most of us. And that's enough light to see where you're going for road and light gravel. It's not like a mountain bike light, but that'll, Unbound XL, that was what he was able to use. And then now Exposure is a little coy about, will it charge in the rain? I asked them. They said, we've heard rumors, but we won't guarantee that.
Why wouldn't it charge in the rain? What is that?
Well, because it's not sealed. It's not like, because that little USB cable that Detour has, Outbound has, is sort of unique. No one has that. So you can plug in a USB-C pack and you can charge it during the night. But if it rains, you do risk water intrusion, although because it's not a sealed, that connection isn't sealed.
Okay.
Now most modern electronics don't actually, like your phone doesn't. It's not a sealed, even though it's waterproof. And the way they make that work is through coatings and things. And my sense is that that's the same thing with this exposure light, but exposure doesn't guarantee that, and I can't say that. But you can get through the night without charging.
Yeah.
And then you can charge
Yeah.
during the day. That's
That's
amazing.
that's the number one concern when doing a big bikepacking race or just a big dumb ride is I want to know my maximum light that I can use until the sun comes up and how long that's going to last. And I
Yeah.
want it to be really straightforward because my brain barely works at the best of times. Like I'm not doing any math anytime, let alone when I'm like 12 hours deep into a death march and 10,000 calories behind. Like the brain is not working. So
Right.
from my perspective, I just want it to do the thing without any trouble. Is there a display on the back of this light that gives you like a current runtime left or anything like that? Because they did
Yes.
do that.
And yes, so they still has it, but now it's color.
Good.
And it tells like it just gives more info. It's better, but it still doesn't say the lumens, right? So it says the battery life that you have left.
Yeah.
But you still
Okay.
have to. You would at home. You pick you pick your mode, and you can look up the lumens, and
Yeah.
when your brain power is low, you just press the button and you don't think.
It's funny, like I'm not scared of the dark for the most part, but like everything changes when you're out there, especially if you're by yourself and the sun is going down and you could just start thinking about things, and then you start thinking like myself personally, I started thinking like, oh, I left home, my light was charged 100%. Actually, did I use the right cable? Is it full?
Yeah.
Is it
No,
fully
totally.
charged? Oh, it's at 70%. Okay, well, I better run it at the mid setting. And like it starts cascading. The
Yeah.
nighttime anxiety starts cascading. And in that sort of situation, you just want to do the simplest thing that will avoid that sort of like mental, not breakdown,
No
but like
mental load. It's a mental load. You do not want mental load. So this light, the Toro 16 is 3,850 lumens. And I think that's with it has this mode I'm not sure if that's like a sustained lumens, but it doesn't matter really for what I'm about to say. So the first mode is it has a high and a low, no medium on that mode, and it will do 3 hours with the 3850 with okay, actually it says it right here. So let me start this over. I'm going to make this a little less confusing. I apologize, everyone. So you've got the mode that I would actually use. See, this is why you figure it out at home, not when you're low brain power. I'm looking at it right now. So the mode number 5, it has 1,778 lumens continuous at 3 hours, right? That's your high. And then your medium is 6 hours at 941 lumens, and your low is 12 hours at 468. So you're out, you set that at home, and then you go out and you're on your crazy ride. It's the sun's just like I laid out. The sun's going down. It's pouring rain. You haven't eaten. You can't think. All you do is you turn on this light and you make sure that it says 12 hours to go, and you know that you're in the mode that you picked and you're good to go. You don't have to think. And if you come up to some sort of crazy, like you're like, what's happening here? And you need more light, then you turn on, you hit the button and it switches to the brighter or the medium, and you use that for a little while, and then the power will update. But like, that you're not going to suddenly turn it to like something crazy and just kill your battery life. And the last thing you want to do is at like 4 a.m. you're like, say it starts that death march of like go
funny
super
story.
low.
I've got a funny story for you. That exact thing happened to me on how long was the ride? It was like 22 or 23 hours or something. And I turned so to be fair, this was my headlamp, the outbound headlamp thing.
Yeah.
And I turned it on high beam because we were on a descent and it was pitch black and rainy and gnarly out. And it got some mud on it. So it kind of like the beam was a bit dimmer looking on the ground. And then I completely forgot to turn it down because I had been riding for, 15 hours at that point and my brain wasn't working. And then the light dies. Now, when a light dies on you, I've got backup lights. I had this thing on my handlebar or whatever. So I've got backup lights. It's not the end of the world, but like my man, it's raining, you're not feeling good, your light dies, you're by yourself, you're on a ride that is 500 kilometers from home, you don't know where you are, and that's when all of a sudden the anxiety kicks in, and that's like exactly what you're talking about. You don't want that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what
I
you want
think
to avoid.
I think that people, if you're used to a light like the Detour that has like 4 modes, right? You press the button,
Yep.
it's on, it shows that it's high, medium, low, whatever. It's super simple. And you think, why would you want something like the Exposure that has all these modes and all these things, and like you got to figure it out, and it's all mental load, because you figure it out at
Yeah.
home when you have plenty of time. You look it up, you do what I just did, and you go, actually, I want the 5th mode, not the 1st mode, even though the 1st mode has a 12-hour low mode,
Yep.
and you figure that all out, and then when you're out there and your brain power is low, all you do is press a button.
Yeah, you don't have to think about it. Exactly. Done. Well, Josh, speaking of not thinking about things, should we end the podcast right here?
Yeah, I think I wanted to tell you about the Exposure light more than anything else. So
Yeah, I think I'm gonna get one of those. The Outbound has been quite good. It's been very nice. I do like how kind of small and like rubberized it is. It's pretty indestructible. Been pretty straightforward. It's worked really, really well. But I'm gonna try something different at some point soon here for this fall weather, and we'll see how it goes.
I'm
We'll
gonna
see how
try
lost
something
I get.
different, like riding inside.
Yeah, that too. We're gonna do our annual Zwift podcast soon.
I'm gonna put it out on the air, on video, wherever you're listening. I want Mike Levy to race with me on Zwift.
Yeah, I'll race you. Yeah, I'll do
Not
that.
race me.
Okay.
I want to race together.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you do a whole thing with like a Discord and everything else, don't you?
Well, so I do. So I actually, sorry everyone, there's a short little tangent here. I did a group ride on Sunday indoors, and they were running a Zoom call, and some of them were on video, and I was like, that is
Oh.
crazy.
I'm not
But
doing
no, we don't have to do that. But here's what I want to do, and I could join a group of people I don't know, but I want to do it with friends, which is where you do a race and you use actual race tactics, because you can, and you just have people in your ear like you're a freaking pro. And how much I remember doing it. I've done it as a team time trial, and it was one of the most fun things I can ever remember doing. And now I want to try a race.
Okay. Well, we're gonna do it at some point. It's still sunny here, but in a couple days it won't be, and then we'll maybe do it.
It's not. It is still sunny here, but it's too dark at night. It gets dark too quickly before I can't go riding after work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's where the light comes in, Josh.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap it up. Everybody, thank you for being here for another episode of the Velo Podcast. Like I said earlier, you can go to the Velo homepage right now and see a ton of World Champs coverage from Jim and Shane and Hoodie. You could also go to the homepage. By the time you listen to this, Josh's light roundup will be up as well. So check that out, as well as Elvin's Factor Aluto first ride article. So check all that out. And as always, give us a thumbs up or something, or share the podcast if you like what you heard today. And we will see you guys next episode. Bye-bye.